Welcome to the Gateless podcast, the place where remarkable women shared their journeys to success. I'm Kara, an executive at a tech startup with a decade of experience founding and leading sales organizations.
And I'm Haley. I'm the owner of a subscription website serving thousands of real estate agents around the globe.
Together, we're the co-founders of Gateless, a community where women share openly and support each other on their own paths to success.
So each episode will bring you inspiring interviews with incredible women who have forged their own paths, overcome challenges, and achieved their version of success.
Our mission is to connect and uplift women in all aspects of their professional lives. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and enlightened.
Welcome to the Gateless podcast.
Welcome, Carolyn.
Hi.
Our guest today, Carolyn, we're so excited to have you and talk to you and dig into this conversation. So Carolyn is the CEO of the Nolan Group, a private wealth advisory practice. She's been named Forbes top women in wealth advisory the last 4 years in a row. But on top of that, and why I'm most excited to talk to you, is just generally you're a badass and you're accomplished, strategic, honest, driven. You're so warm and open and present and thoughtful. And so this is like, you came to mind immediately as we were thinking of women that we want to have on this podcast and share the story of. So thank you for being here. Thank you in advance for sharing your story. We can't wait to dig in.
It's a great way to start the day. I'm pumped.
Oh, good. I'm glad you feel that way. So to kick it off, I mean, I don't know any of this, so this is going to be like a great organic conversation for us. But can you tell us a little bit about just younger version of you and what you were like, and if you had any idea what you wanted to be, or if you knew who you were going to be? Let's start there.
Okay, so let's go back in time. So let's go back to college. I think I changed majors like 4 times. I was originally a bio pre-med. I love math and science. My passion's always been people. I don't think I would have said that then. What's funny is, even let's go back more in time. I was applying for high school. My parents weren't going to send me to the public school. They'd gone against investing in the advanced placement program. So my parents were like, you have to go to private school. I'm like, fine, reluctantly. And I applied for this one like really elite school and didn't get in, but I got out of this interview. My mom asked me, so what did they ask you? And I'm like, they just asked me to describe myself. Or like, how would your friends describe you? And I just told them, like, they would say I'm a goof. And my mom's like, you said this in this interview? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, are we supposed to fake it or be real? So I'm like a really goofy, silly person, but like I say to clients, or especially men, I'm like, don't let the blonde hair fool you. Like, there's way more to me than that. But I'm like a really silly, fun, lighthearted person that does some very serious stuff, but I approach it in a really fun way. I originally started as a bio pre-med. I love studying math and science stuff. And again, I changed my majors to like econ because that felt like I didn't want to be in school till I was 100. So I was like, this isn't going to work. And I always pictured being a mom and having the flexibility or the ability to be with my kids. And I'm like, I don't think if I go into medicine, I'll have that. So I was like, fuck this. I'm not doing this. And quickly was like, I'm out. Then I went to econ. Then I went to math. And I was like, this sucks and it's dry. And I landed in psychology, not like, oh, I want to be a psychologist, but I just listened to my gut and was like, this is really interesting, intriguing. I love the topics, the coursework. My parents are like, we're paying like $1 zillion a year for you to go now be a psychologist and Italian minor. So like, you're going to be an Italian psychologist. I'm like, yeah, fine. And my friends in college, I went to Georgetown, that again, don't let the blonde hair fool you, like got into Georgetown. That's the hardest part. Then I was there, I like cruised because again, it was like cutthroat getting there. I got there and was like, peace out, I'm going to party. And I did that. And my parents were not happy about that. But the most I learned in college, honestly, was waiting tables and like hustling. And I learned how to make money. I learned how to create experiences. And that wasn't the thought at the time. But when I reflect back on it, that's what I was learning. And I recognize that's where I was having the most fun, was creating these experiences, making money, making my own schedule, and coming out with a boatload of cash in my pocket that we spent immediately after leaving. So out of college, most of our friends had jobs in like corporate finance and they all had things lined up. And I was like, I'll figure it out, which they freaked out about. But I don't know. I just always have trusted in my ability to make it work. But my parents at the time were like, well, you better figure it out. Because by September, like, you can live here, but like, you're on your own. I was like, oh, shoot. So, but I mean, I knew. So I started at the time you would apply on monster.com. That was like what you did.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'll just throw a bunch of shit on the wall, see what sticks. I almost got this gig in commercial real estate, just playing the networking game with friends. I got down to the last two candidates, didn't get it. That now in hindsight, I'm like, I think that's so great. And I feel very lucky, but it was a cool experience. And one that I was like, it like kind of relit me of like, all right, well, when you know what you do want, like you're going to get it. I don't know if you wanted it bad enough or you would have got it, Carolyn. So I ended up at an interview with American Express Financial at the time. And I they would hire at the time anyone with a pulse. That's the whole industry. That's not just this company. And ended up starting there. I come home, I tell my parents like, oh, there's this opportunity to become a financial advisor. And they're like, what's the pay? I'm like, oh, there's no pay. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, you can make whatever. And they're like, you studied psychology and Italian, Carolyn. Like, I'm like, it's fine. I had run into a friend, and he was like, he locked me in his office and he's like, Carolyn, you have to do this. I'm like, Pete, I don't know what this is. And he's like, well, you're going to try it and you'll learn everything on the job. And if you don't get it or you hate it, like you'll be 22 and you can do something else. Who cares? And I was like, that sounds good. And that's where I hit the ground running. And I'm still one of those weirdos that's at the same firm. The company was called American Express at the time, spun off within a year or two, became Ameriprise Financial. And in 2015, I went to the independent side of the firm. And that's when my real entrepreneurial journey as an independent owner began.
Wow. I mean, okay.
That takes you back a little bit.
Yeah. No, I love it. So the tell me, I'm very curious to hear more about the move to the psychology major and like how often you're actually using that in your day-to-day life, because I feel very similar. Like when people ask me, what books do you read? What podcasts do you listen to? Like, do you listen to sales podcasts and read sales books? And I'm like, no, those are like soul-sucking, horrendous experiences. I listen to psychology, I read psychology books and listen to podcasts about like human behavior, because that, regardless of what you do, is what makes you, I think, like able to communicate, influence, and just be generally like a well-rounded person on the planet, and like be seen as somebody that people want to talk to and can open up to and feel really comfortable with. So I guess it's less about like cool that you landed on the psychology major. That was probably a little bit because it was interesting, a little bit because you're like had to pick something, like we all had to. How did that actually play into the early days of your career and the quick success that you had?
Well, I think where I landed in psychology is, again, wasn't a conscious thought at the time, but now I recognize is I just had a genuine curiosity in people.
Yeah.
And just learning about why people do what they do. And my career happens to be why people do what they do with their money. Mm-hmm. And helping people make those behavioral or conscious thoughts, making the unconscious conscious, I guess, is a lot of what we do. It's not like I studied it. It's not like I didn't have to study it. I think back at really what I learned, and it was the experiences waiting tables when you end up a person short on a Sunday brunch and the place is packed, and how to talk people down when they're like, that food's not here, blah, 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 and trying to just like get people to smile. And that wasn't something I was taught. That's just something since I was a kid, I just always liked to do. And I just so we're clear, like, it's not like, oh, one day this came to me. Like I've done a lot of exercises to come to learn more about me and just how I tick. And I share it with others for them to do too. Because as I learned that and I look back at my past, I go, I've always been this person. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily what certainly there's a lot in our career as financial advisors. Like, you have to learn. You can't get around. You can't just be curious about people and do great. Like, you have to actually know what the heck you're doing.
Right.
But I think the best people in all fields, like really just give a shit about people and are like trying to help them get to where they're trying to go. And we specifically do that. You know, we help people with that with their money, but it's really helping to understand what makes you tick, what gets you excited. And then money is just a tool by which you get what you want. It's not about like, let's just collect all the money and take it to the grave. It's like, no, let's have preparedness so we can actually live the life that we want to live, which again, wasn't something I was aware, or even if you told me that, which someone probably did tell me when I started in the career path, but I didn't really come to understand that until I was at least a decade into the career. And you start to see people do the things that you help them save for, and see the kids go to college, and you're like, whoa, this is really cool. So it's been pretty neat. But yeah, no, I read all the things. Like I read the things I don't love because I have to learn them. You know, taking my CFP exam was like poke my eyeball out with a sharp object. Like it was awful. But like you have to do that. I actually met my husband in my CFP review course, so that was a good byproduct.
There you go. You got something great out of it. You got a career and a husband.
Yeah, totally. Which didn't happen immediately. It's funny because it was a 4-day, 40-hour, like brutal class. And again, I show up just as me. I have on like sweatpants and some weird, like just cozy shirt and probably like slippers. Cause I was like, I'm here to like get my CFP. Like, I don't give a shit with anyone else. Like I'm just laser focused. And he was like studying, and I'm in the back going, stop the class. My highlighter's dead. I need a minute. And he's like, you're so annoying. And he was trying to recruit me and my friends, which we didn't know it at the time. But we ended up like months after the exam, which he only went to the first day. He didn't actually prepare for it. And I'm not like trying to shit on Tim. He just really didn't care. But like we ended up, so just side story. He invites us to lunch. And so we go. We realize in the meantime that our families have some connections. So we go to lunch. My other 2 girlfriends come. My mom shows up. She's like, I've known Timmy Nolan since he was a baby. So Tim's like, oh, I guess this recruiting thing isn't happening. And then 8 bars later, pub crawl and magic sparks. I think I attacked him at the beer garden. And now we have 3 kids. But I actually recruited him. He's now at Ameriprise.
Oh, wow. At what point did that happen? Did you guys start working together professionally?
No. Oh God, we didn't start working together. And we're actually still not technically working together. We're just under the same parent company, but he joined Ameriprise in 2017. He and his dad worked together, and they had seen the success that I have and like really what we started building on the independent side of the firm. And they were like, that's our path to being part of that, either ourselves or we'll decide to join forces. And so that was in 2017 that they came over.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's just been like, you know, again, I say like, you can talk about having these master plans, but like then life happens.
Yep.
And I think it's just like, you know, Tim, like even Tim, you'll ask him now, you're like, so did you get your CFP? And he points at me and he goes, I did. She's right there. Because he never actually got it and he doesn't care. But it's sometimes such a gift when things don't work out the way that you planned. And instead it's just like, again, continuing to throw enough stuff intentionally on the wall and just being like, again, curious, I think is the best word to use with people and just your experiences to be like, what did I learn here? Mm-hmm. Or again, like thinking back at college and like, they tried to fire me from the job. I went skydiving with my other wait staff person and we get back wicked late and they like missed a shift and they tried to fire us. And we like ended up selling them on why they can't fire us and how we're their best salespeople. And like neither of us lost our job. But like you think back at these experiences later and realize like, oh, I was always hardwired to like do that. So like certainly I like honed my skills in other ways, but like you start to realize like you've always been the person that you are now. Mm-hmm. And it's just as you're more intentional about it, the swifter and quicker and more fun it can be. And it's less like frustrating when you hit speed bumps because you're just like, oh, it's just a speed bump. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, my life is over. My plan isn't going as planned. It's like, whose does? Like, seriously?
No one's. There's this book I've been reading called Everyday Dharma, and it's about like Dharma is the person and the passion that you are, and it's always been there, and you could either use it to light a fire around you and light the passion inside of you to create the life you want, or it will burn your house down kind of if you don't use it. And it sounds like what yours is that you've always wanted to help people, and you've always wanted to help people figure out why they do the things that they do. And that just happened to come out in the form of your like very successful career, which is incredible. But I think a lot of people fall into their first job pretty unintentionally. And like, you can work your ass off in college. And like, this is so similar to how I started in my career. Like I worked so hard, did the majors that I knew like business and finance, and I was going to go get them. And then I was put in this monkey job at Morgan Stanley, clicking the same buttons every day. And I was like, this is not my dharma. Like I'm out so hard on this. But even after that, like to your point, it took you about a decade to start getting intentional and realize consciously that what you were doing was what you were always meant to do in some form. And I'm really curious to hear about that for you. Like, at what point in your career did you start getting intentional and have the conscious moment of like, oh shit, like I am absolutely where I'm supposed to be. I have all of these things at my fingertips to go build and create and help and do all the things that I want to do. And now I'm going to make an intentional plan, a plan more specific than just like, I'm a hard worker, I'm driven, and I'm going to give it my best, but like really thinking to the future.
Yeah. And that is like the perfect kind of like summary of how it progressed. That like in the beginning, it was just like, I'm going to make it rain because that's just like what I do. And, you know, they would tell you like, book 12 appointments. And I'd be like, I'm going to book 20. And they're like, yeah. And like, you know, work 50 hours. And I'm like, I'm going to work 80. And like when you're 22, it's like, what the heck else am I going to do? Yeah. So and when you're 22, you can work and party equally as hard and not have a 4-day hangover. By the way, now I don't drink because I did way too much of that. But oh my God, the first night is just so awful. You always start on a Wednesday, and I was living at home, and we went out and we and this is 2004. It's just before Uber, and like I don't even know how the hell I got home. And my mom was like waiting up for me at 2 a.m. at the kitchen table, like where I don't know if we had cell phones. Like, did we? I don't know. And she was just like, where were you? And like, it's 2 and you're going to go to work at 7? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Because you can do that when you're 22. Like, there's none of that anymore. But yeah, a huge part of my drive was just because that's just what I do. And honestly, it wasn't like I cruised in college because I was lazy. Like in high school, I almost like was on verge of panic attacks to get into college.
Yep.
And it sounds like that has not changed, which I think is really unfortunate because it drove someone like me to party like an idiot in college because that was like the hardest part was getting in. I quickly learned that to get a B took no effort, and to get an A, you were like on the verge of suicide. So I was like, B's are fine. And cruised for 4 years and partied like an idiot. And then I was ready to work because I was like over it when college was done. I was like, okay, but I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. And so I feel very lucky, but I also was like, I trusted my gut. I wasn't just trying to fill the tux with like some job. So yeah, in the beginning, it was just work for the sake of working and kind of gamifying and making something out of nothing. And I had success like very quickly. And quickly, I mean like the first year I killed it. Like in the grand scheme of the nation of new advisors, like I was in the top group, like top 10 people in the country. Like it was awesome. But it was also me being me and like showing up and like you would wear like there's no way they exist now. Victoria's Secret used to make suits, like clothes. And like that's what we would wear. And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna wear a pink suit.
A Victoria's Secret pink suit when your debut into the corporate world. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with you.
Al Woods, eat your heart out. Yes. And but that still wasn't authentically me. I was still like just trying on a way.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too as a woman in that career because it's still mostly men. And like some of my colleagues, they would like pretend to be married because it made them look older. It was so creepy. And there was a lot of creepy, gross stuff that happened.
Oh my God, I considered doing that one time. I considered putting on a fake engagement ring so that men in my corporate job would take me more seriously. And in hindsight, I'm like, what the fuck were you thinking, Kara? But like, it crossed my mind.
I know, but it's a real thing as a woman, and I'm not going to say it's unfair. It's like, because now I like mentor a lot of just like younger women that I come to meet along the way. One of them's a golf pro, and she's like in her mid-20s, and we were just talking about how like she's like, it sucks. I end up at these events and we're all drinking, and then some creepy married guy is hitting on me, and I'm like, listen, it sucks, but like there's certain things you got to just know as an attractive young woman. Like one of them is like, nothing good happens after 11. It just doesn't. Like, just, you got to just go. Or maybe not drink. I'm like, but just know what it is. So in my world, it was mostly men, which again, when you're 22 in an office of 100 guys, it was really fun.
I bet.
I had a lot of fun and had my pick of the litter, pick of the pickings. And, but it was like, but I was doing really well. And a lot of the guys, especially young guys, didn't want to be like, Carolyn, oh my God, you're killing it. It was like, oh, are you sleeping with your client? It's like, yes, I'm sleeping with everybody. Yes, that must be why I'm doing well.
Must be the only reason that you could have such success.
Yeah,
totally.
Did that ever, get to you? And I feel like that would really bother me.
Me too.
It honestly motivated me because I knew that wasn't the case, and I would just laugh. So what I've actually kind of always, not always, I've gotten way better at it. By my nature, I'm very just reactive. And as time has gone on, I've like on purpose practiced and learned to like take a breath before responding. Instead of being like, why don't you go fuck yourself? It's more of just like, okay. If that's what you think, like, that's fine. And, a couple of years later, the same guys would be like, so can you tell me what you're doing? I'm like, oh, now you want to know?
Yeah. It's insecurity, why people like undermine the reason for success. And as soon as you can spot that immediately, like you can save so much energy and time not getting into it. It's hard though.
Well, it's so hard, but it's like, it's also like, don't try to change people. Kind of, oh my God. Like I love dating the bad boy. When I started dating my husband, my mom's like, are you ready for a nice man? I'm like, I hope so. He's like the nicest man. He's just a nice human. But I used to date the bad boys in college. I'm like, I'm going to change them. And like, you can't change people. No. Like they might change, but like, and maybe you influence them. But so like, I think the big thing is like haters going to hate, like just stay away from those people. And just find the positive people that are going to like try to collaborate and not compete. Or like, I would find the people in my office that we were gamifying like healthy competition. Like there was one of my colleagues, like probably in the first 10 years, and you can see exactly what your whole market group was producing every week. So there's no ambiguity of where people were at. And this guy, Paul, at the end of the year, he was beating me by like $10 in like the millions of dollars we were doing. And it was like, he thought he had me. And then the last report of the year came out and I just went ahead and he messaged me just like, I've been competing with you, even though you don't know it. And you got me like, but it was like a healthy competition. Yeah. So it's just like finding those people that get it, and those that don't, just stay away from them. Like whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah. Your job especially, I mean now, but especially at the beginning was so measurable and transparent in terms of how you were doing. Like that's just the nature of that game. It probably was apparent to you how much money other men around you were making or how much you could make or things like that. But I don't think that that's the case for a ton of women especially, but anybody. Like you don't know what milestones you should be shooting for sometimes at the beginning of your career. Like, okay, they said they were going to pay me this much money. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if that's equivalent to what my counterpart that's a man or woman is making. So I'm curious, like tell us about one of the first money milestones you hit for yourself, like a conscious goal that you wanted to hit, and what was it? And let's just talk about it.
Yeah. It was $100,000 and I hit it in the first year. And my parents, again, I entered this career that my parents were like, this is stupid. It came from a good place. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe your parents said that. Like they were just scared for me that I was entering this unknown, like again, psychology and Italian undergrad, entering finance, but they pay you nothing. And actually in the beginning, I almost failed out. You had to like get 5 clients in the first like 2 months or something. And I like couldn't even get someone to set an appointment. So it's not like there was immediate success. I just was unwilling to fail and was just motivated. And you can't look at the short term. It's kind of like, even if you're on like a diet plan, like if I'm going to compare if me and Tim, my husband, are going to like do a diet, like I expect he's going to drop 20 pounds and like just thinking about it overnight. Like it's just not, but yeah, the first milestone was like, I'm going to make $100,000. And actually within the first, like without getting into detail, because my God, it could be like a 4-week episode of nonstop talking. My parents went through like major crazy divorce, like went from having gazillions to negative millions. They had taken risks. My dad in commercial real estate didn't work out, really didn't work out, and really scary shit as a like 24-year-old seeing happening to your family.
Yeah.
And at first I went into like a normal person probably would if I went into more detail of understanding what was not just what was happening, but how I was being put in the middle of it. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just a kid. I don't know. This is my parents. And I have 2 younger siblings too, who are still in college at the time. And at first I just went into like a hole and was just like a puddle and was like, oh my God, what's happening? But that was like a real normal reaction. And then at some point, it was probably not for like a year though. Like I was just surviving in the stuff I had already built and the kind of the Ferris wheel. I love this analogy. When you're getting into something hard, it's like picturing like, and I didn't create this analogy. I stole it from someone. It's imagining this ginormous, like real legit Ferris wheel. And you're trying with like all your energy to just get it to move a little bit. And most people would be like, forget it. I quit. I'm done. And that's what most people do in hard businesses or hard anything. And I was just the idiot that kept pulling at the stupid thing. And at some point it starts moving and then you still have to exert effort, but it's like a little bit less and it's a little bit less. And then at a certain point you're looking at the thing and you're kind of giving it a finger, like bing, just to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the most awesome analogy, but most people quit because it's so hard or they hit some failure. Or they don't get the thing's spinning and they're like, oh, this didn't work. That's not how this works. It's not how most things work. But I shared the thing with my folks because the Ferris wheel was moving. So I had a little bit of space that I could just be present, but I was in a puddle. And then at a certain point I was like, all right, Carolyn, you can't control this crazy shit that's happening in your family. What can you do? And I was like, I'm going to make it rain and make sure my mom doesn't have to, and my siblings, I was like, it's weird when you realize your parents are people.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's like when your childhood ends. Like the moment you realize your parents are older, or like not
they
older.
actually have flaws. And
the moment you realize your parents aren't perfect is when your childhood ends. And I feel like everybody has that moment that they remember that happening.
Yeah. And so that happened and that became, it no doubt, and it wasn't a moment, it was years of fucking awfulness. And it's still awful when you think about the things, but there was a point that I just kind of went to myself, like, what can you do here, Carolyn? And it was like, pull up your panties and like, let's go. And like, just one day at a time, like bringing it back together. And that became more of my drive, not out of spite, but more of just, this is something I can control and I can do. And in my doing that, I can then help, if not influence or support other people that aren't looking for me or expecting me to do it, but it's not going to hurt. But it certainly might help. And that became my motivator. When I have 3 kids now who are 11. My first is a girl, Winnie. She's 11. T-Swift, Swifty. We can talk about that if we get to that. It was really fun. We went to the movie last week and it was like little girls crying hysterically. I was like, this is the best thing ever. It was amazing. Then my 9.5-year-old Dennis, who's like a hockey mullet bro, just like he could win the lottery and be like, yeah, like he just doesn't care. And then Marty, the one-man party, my 6-year-old, who's a thrill.
Marty, the one-man party.
Marty, the one-man party. Kid lives on chocolate because he's the 3rd kid. So you're like, whatever, just don't starve. I don't care. So when I had 2 kids and we were living in the burbs, but I was still going to the office, or our office was in Boston, but I hated schlepping to Boston. And it's so close, but it would take so long to get there. And so I started working out of the house. And it was awesome that I could, but I actually hated it. I'd have 2 little kids and our nanny would be downstairs. And when anyone that has little kids, like if your little kids see you, they don't want anyone else. They just want you.
Yeah.
So I was like a slave in the 3rd floor. I was like, Cinderella or like Rapunzel. I don't know, whatever. One of those characters. And I'd be texting our nanny, like, can you just make me a sandwich and like leave it on the stairs? Like they can't see me. And I was like, this sucks. I hate this. And I also like, there were things I wanted to do in the business. So what I now know is I've always been very entrepreneurial, but I didn't even know what the heck that was. But I was in an environment because I was, I'm still at the same parent company, Ameriprise. I love the firm, but there's two different sides of the firm for the advisor. It doesn't impact the client in any way if anyone's an Ameriprise client. It's more just how the advisor functions, that they either run their own P&L in their own business, that's the independent side, or you have a lot of red tape, but it also keeps you out of trouble. But you don't have to deal with a bunch of crap. You don't have to deal with real estate and staff and benefits and all that stuff. So I wasn't liking, though, that they were saying no to all my ideas. And I was killing it. So I was like, I know I'm helping this P&L. So why can we not? And when I had kids, they would like basically be like, oh, Carolyn's out on maternity leave. Yeah, right. I never took a maternity leave. And it was like whoever was working on my team, they're like, oh, she can do other things because Carolyn's not here. I was like, what the heck? So I just didn't like that. I was like, I want it to actually be my company and my team. I hate the word staff. I don't use the word staff. Staff, I think of like a big stick, like a staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, staff is not a person. That's like saying secretary, like my staff, my secretary. I'm like, oh God.
I'm curious, at what point so you started, obviously you were 22, you started and you were by yourself. At what point in your career did you form a team and kind of scale your business?
Yeah. No, perfect segue. And you guys, just were clear, you guys don't know this story. So that was perfect, Haley. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because so it was just me and one other team member, staff person at the office then. And I was schlepping to Boston when I did, or otherwise I was in my home in the burbs and she was going to the office. But I also didn't like that I couldn't control the knuckleheads that sat around her. And I kind of saw it as like a cancer culture, like it wasn't good, negative, but I couldn't control or influence any of that. So my husband and I are walking the kids down the street in our suburban town, and we see this space for lease. And I'm like, yeah, let's just check this out. We see this space. It's a mile from my house. This is this beautiful building. And I was like, whoa, Tim, can you imagine if this was our office? And he was like, let's do it. And he and I are both like nuts. Like we're just nuts like that. We've another story, another day is lots of stories of our real estate journey. But we ended up like within a couple of weeks signing the space. I decided to go to the independent side of the firm, and that's where we're going to go. And that's when we started going, if you build it, they will come kind of. Mm-hmm. And started with the gal that I was working with in the Boston office, joined me on the independent side. She joined, we hired someone else. And over the years, that started in 2015. At first, there were 3 of us. And then within a couple of years, there were 6. And then a year later, there was 11. Then all of a sudden, there's 20. And it was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But what happened is as I kept making more and having more success, I chose every time. It's almost like when you make money and people talk about like a little for me, a little for tax, a little for charity or whatever. I was like, okay, as I was making money, it was just like intentional balance of I want to take a lot for me because I did it took a lot of risk to finally see the return. And then I'm also going to take a lot of the return and invest it back into people and build a team. And now I have a self-managing company, but that took stupid amounts of intentional effort, tons of risk, tons of reward, also tons of headache. And I would never change anything for it. But a lot of people just don't want to do it. They're just like,
it's hard.
No,
but
it's so hard, but so rewarding. And, sometimes people talk about their work being like family. Like, no, it's not family. It's because it's not. It's a community of people that we choose to be with each other and respect one another and support one another. But sometimes the people in the community don't work anymore and you need to let them go. You don't do that with your family. You don't do that with your family.
That's
so we're not going to pretend it's family.
Yeah.
I like to think of our team as like almost like when I started, it was more of like I'm on the club team, and then you make freshmen, and then you're JV, and so you just keep trying to up level. But there's different people that fit in the team when you hit different levels. So I think of it more of almost like I'm building a team of people, but there's not a limited number of spots. Like the team gets bigger as the practice gets bigger.
Yeah.
But sometimes the people just aren't the right fit for the team of clients that we're supporting.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're working with a $20 million client, I'm not going to bring someone that would have played on the club team.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's too big of a divide. Like they're a great person. We are friends, but they should be in a company that's more of like maybe a freshman level.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started owning like every ounce of your destiny, basically, because you like inputs or outputs when it's just you. And then as you transition into having a team, you made reference a few minutes ago to like trying different things on, like you're trying on the pink Victoria's Secret suit to like see how that felt. And like, it wasn't quite authentic, but I think like myself, definitely. But as I've gone from being an individual contributor where I felt like I did have total control and like I kind of knew who I was and I knew my vibe, into leadership roles, and now this role of creating something and community building, like it's been on my mind a lot of like, oh my gosh, I guess I'll try this personality on. I guess I'll try this vibe on. And so I'm curious how that came up for you, like maybe in general in the career, but especially as you make that transition to like, all of a sudden you have this beautiful office a mile from your home in the burbs and you have a 20-person team and you like the boss. And that's
I won't let anyone say boss.
Okay.
I won't let anyone say boss. I hate that word. And almost as much as I hate the word secretary and staff, I'm like, I'm not the boss. I'm the leader of this team, though.
Okay.
Yes, like look at me as your, or like the captain of the team. Like there's an expectation of leadership that comes with that. Yeah, and actually that was and for me, honestly, that was a big reason of where I decided consciously, not was forced or coerced, but it probably could have gotten to that if I wasn't aware of. I really love drinking. I still love drinking, but I just don't, because when I started to imagine, as this thing started getting really big relative to where it used to be for me, right? So like just being aware of like, this is not what it used to be. Like this is a company now. Oh my God. This isn't just like this little thing I'm doing. It's a company. Holy shit. Like we have health insurance. Like, oh.
You give benefits.
Yeah. And I do this active journaling. My goal is to do it monthly. It doesn't always happen. It's usually quarterly, and it's addressing like, all right, just reflecting openly, like what were the wins of the last 90 days? What am I trying to do in the next 90, in the next year, in the next 10 or 5 years? And then reflecting like, well, what are you doing and how is it going to get you there? And that was actually when I was like, well, the leader of this company and this organization and this community isn't getting shit-faced at every single event. Like that's not what the leader looks like. And my business partner now shares, she's like, I was within months of talking to you about it. And I was like, I'm so relieved it was my idea and not yours. That would have made me so mad. And this is not a stake in the ground for sobriety. Like everyone has their own journey, but I share it because I think it's a thing that affects a lot of women, and they're embarrassed about it. And I'm not. I'm like, it's like, I don't associate with the word alcoholic. I'm just like, no, it didn't serve me and like where I was trying to go, but man, I love it.
Was that a tough?
What I found is I get a buzz on just like being with people. Like it was something I thought I needed and I actually don't. And it definitely like could be harmful, not helpful for me. Cause there's no one glass of wine. It was like multiple bottles, like, wee.
Was it a tough choice?
No. It didn't happen overnight. It was years of just curious, like following different Instagram pages and kind of observing. And once I decided I was going to take at least a quarter off, because it was coming off like a year that we did personally, like 8 real estate transactions. We were in the middle of moving our house, or we were renovating our full house, a 1900 Tudor. So when people say like, oh, why do people tear down those beautiful old homes? It's like, because they're a fuckload of work and money. That's why they tear them down. We did not do that because we love the 1900 old Tudor. But we moved, I think, 5 times that year. My poor kids were like, where do we live? I'm like, I don't know. And in the midst of it all, at one point I was like, I should take a break, because I was looking at myself and going like, what can I do to make this any better? And I was like, oh man, you should stop drinking. Oh, this is really annoying. Okay. And so I committed to a quarter, And then once you decide something, it's talk about like decision fatigue. There was no decision to make. I'd made my decision. So if you're 100% committed to anything, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's when you're 99.9% committed, it's a million times harder.
Yeah.
Because there's like that, like, when are you going to say it's okay to not do the thing that otherwise you do? So no judgment. It's just when you already make your decision, it's easy.
I relate to your story so much on so many different levels. Like the same thing, like with college, I like didn't know what I was going to major in, everything to like being a server. And then you jumped into a career with no salary. Like I jumped into real estate and then it ended up working out. But same thing about like, I'm very sober curious right now in my life. And I've been taking a lot of breaks and I totally agree with everything you're saying. I feel like I'm on the path, on your similar path.
Yeah, and everyone's journey is different. I think it's just good just to be aware of it. And like, there's a lot of friends as that started happening for me that they just carry so much shame with them with drinking stuff. And I'm just like, listen.
At some point, it's like you don't have time. You don't got like I don't have time for the anxiety, the feelings, the hangover, all the stuff. Like Haley and I talk about alcohol often. But we have different experiences with it, but it's such an important topic because especially when you're talking to a community of women that want to achieve a lot and that want to be the best version of themselves and want to make an impact on whatever they do in their life. It's like, and I agree with you that no judgment, but at some point you look at it like everything else in your life, which is, you said it, like, how do I make this a little easier? How do I get an incremental edge? How do I do anything to set myself up for better happiness, better success, better sleep, better relationships, better whatever? And like for everybody, it's not always you look to alcohol. There's other behaviors that can totally be detrimental.
No, it could be, staying up too late, not getting enough sleep, watching TV instead of getting your workout in, or being present with your family or your friends. Like and the point is not perfection. Like it's just awareness and curiosity. And again, that whole behavior thing, and not because I studied it, but that's always been my interest of just these conversations. And it's just about like thinking every day, like, how can I just have a 1% better day?
Yeah.
Like, what can I do? What can I do? And that's like, no doubt, like I know a huge part of then incremental success that we've seen in our practice, me and Tim personally, professionally, and with just each other as a couple and how we run this crazy life that we do. It's just looking at the controllables and having some, on the surface, it sounds like robotic, some of the structure we put in place, but it's what allows us to be actually like really present otherwise, because we like really tackle what we can do and talk through like how we can support one another, not like therapy talk, but like thinking through just logistics of the week when you have a family and businesses and all that stuff. And literally just like really having some level of plan that's adaptable, but a plan going into the day, the week, the quarter, the year. But it takes a lot of practice to get good at, even kind of good at it. Like, so expect if you're just starting with that, like you're going to be awful at it. But like, if you're, like even in our team, like we started practicing and now like we can't imagine operating without like the weekly meeting we have in each department and the monthly meeting with like, at first you're like, what the hell do we even talk about here? And then at a certain point you're like, I can't imagine not having this. But again, I think most people quit in the beginning when they're like, it doesn't work. You don't get an immediate result. No, let's just not do that.
No, it really, like what you're describing is, I think, one of the like biggest behaviors of high performing people in general is having the ability to like zoom in and zoom out and constantly look at your overall life and the things that you're doing and how to gain an incremental edge, what you're doing in your business, how you're like down to how do I structure my calendar every day? Like, what do I do when I first wake up? It is like constantly having the ability to evaluate it and have the awareness that like you could be tweaking things all the time to perfect and iterate and better yourself is like a quality, I think, of very high performing people. I mean, if somebody told me that, I'm definitely a person that if somebody tells me I'm going to get a little edge by doing the one thing, I will always do it. If somebody told me I had to eat a pineapple core every day for the rest of my life, so that I could have better brain function, I would do it. You have talked about a lot of like the controllables in your career. And we haven't talked a ton about some of the things that a lot of people face, like uncontrollables, I suppose, or maybe we shouldn't categorize them as uncontrollables, but like the headwinds or the barriers and kind of like gatekeeping that happens in anybody's career. As you think about that topic, are there things that come to mind that are worth sharing around just?
I think it's just find your community, and if there isn't one, like create one. So just find, whether it's just like a person that you can bounce ideas off of. I think there's just some people that I quickly realized, like they loved giving. I mean, first of all, everyone loves talking about themselves. You can get anyone to talk about themselves. You want someone to just give you some ideas. But there's some people that, like, and to this day, one of my first mentors in the business is now a dear friend, and I could call him out of the blue and know that he'll just give me an earful that I'll be pulling some good nuggets out of. So if I need a swift kick in the ass, I call Larry. There's other friends that I know are my go-to if I need to vent. There's other people if I need to talk about strategy. But they're people that I have a genuine relationship and connection with, and it goes both ways. I think the biggest thing, and I know now, like I do a lot of informal mentoring for different people. And what I know for me that's true is I love offering the advice, but if you're not going to take it, like don't come back and ask for stuff again. Like I want to celebrate. Yeah. Like I'm not like getting off by hearing about what you do, but that makes me want to keep helping you because I want to see the impact of the conversation we have, not just talk for the sake of talking, because I actually don't want to be a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I quickly have found is I don't like being a therapist. And, even in our team, we talk about like, we're kind of like therapists, but we're more like coaches because we're going to actually give you the tools and hold you accountable to get doing the things that get you results. Or like a great personal trainer. Like if I was a personal trainer, which I don't have any interest in being, but if I was one, I would only want ones that are going to follow, not perfectly, but follow the program. And if you're not, like, it's okay. We can still be friends, but you can't be part of this community.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're actually trying to also see what works. And you can't if you just think. You can think yourself into like nothingness. And I think that's what most people do. And then other people try to do too much at once.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about just picking one thing at a time. So get really good at picking the one thing, whether it's your one thing a quarter that you're trying to master. So, I mean, we have a mutual friend, Lindsay, that I got connected with because I was looking for an accountability coach, not someone to tell me what to do, but someone that just asked me every day, did you do your thing?
Mm-hmm.
And she's now a friend and like, but she'll be my accountability coach until she doesn't want to do it anymore. And I'm not going to let that happen because I don't take no for an answer. So, but like, even in the last couple of years of working together, like, and she gives me that reflection of like, you're just way better at picking the thing, of like breaking it down into those atomic steps instead of like, step one, solve world hunger. It's like, no, bad choice. Let's do something smaller in that direction of.
Bad choice. Yeah. Yeah, that resonates.
So even in a health journey, it's like reflecting like I previously wouldn't drink enough water. There'd be days I wouldn't drink anything but coffee or wine. Like that was it. And I know a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't have enough water in your body, you can't even think properly.
Yeah.
So anyway, like that was my habit, the only thing I focused on and nothing else for 3 months until that just became my new normal, So I think people need to slow down to speed up. I think that's my best advice. And like in summary, and think really big. So when you think bigger than what you could even imagine, even if you don't get to it, you're going to get way bigger results than you would have if you set your goals smaller.
Yep.
So make your ideal vision of what you're trying to do way bigger than you could have ever imagined, and then make your goals relative to that vision.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We have a jam sesh for the rest of the day working on Gateless stuff, and part of it is future planning, and dreaming is not hard for me. Like I told her, I was like, so by this time next year, this podcast will be sponsored and we're going to have these guests on, and all of a sudden she's like, whoa, okay. But that's, you're right. You're totally right. Like if you shoot really big and really high, you'll get somewhere that you're proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's going to be way bigger than if you're just slow and steady. And listen, the slow and steady isn't bad, but if you want like great things, you need to make some great choices.
Bold. Yeah, bold moves. I'm working now with an executive coach that has helped me figure out she has a method, and we went through an exercise of who do you want to be by the end of, who do you want to be that you're not currently by the end of the year? And I, had to figure out some of them, but one of them is confident in myself to make the bold moves that I know I need to make. And that's because I want to achieve big things in the next 5 years of my life, and starts with having the confidence to actually do the big things. And I think this is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah,
getting
absolutely.
out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, and then the challenge becomes not getting stuck in but I'm not there where I pictured what she looks like. And the challenge is to look backwards and say, where did I come from and where am I now? Yep. And celebrating that forward progress. And you're going to do that indefinitely. And that's something I've gotten really good at, of not feeling like I'm not there yet. There is no there yet.
Yeah.
There's no there yet.
It's just the progress.
No. And I think that's where, everyone's heard the saying, it's what's the journey, not the destination. And that's where everything I am is because I live that now, not because I chose to, but I had to practice that skill. I had to practice that as a conscious intention of am I having fun? Or even when it's hard, or it's what did I learn? Oh, what an experience. Even the terrible things with my parents that went down. It was not I'm happy it happened, but I'm so proud of the choice that I ultimately made, that I could have also just played a victim, and not in that wouldn't have been a crazy, unreasonable thing. But the only thing in the world you can control is your behavior. That's it.
Yeah.
There's only one thing. That's it. So it's make good choices and surround yourself with others that support making good choices, and create a community of people that want to help each other make good choices. And everyone else can pound sand, whatever. I don't care what they do. They're not in the community.
I love that.
They're not in the circle.
Yeah.
You make it sound so simple and packaged up beautifully.
Oh, it's really messy. Really messy. It's really messy, but it's so worth it. Because otherwise it's just whatever. I don't care.
I know we've kept you over, and I could talk to you forever. I love this conversation. I hope we talk to you again, because there's so much that you have been through and have learned that I'm learning from. So thank you so much for giving us more than an hour of your day. I think this conversation made a few things really clear in my brain, but also inspired me to do some things differently. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. This is super fun. I'll come on and just shoot the breeze with you girls anytime.
I love it.
Love that. This has been awesome.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Gateless podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we have.
Remember, the Gateless community is at your fingertips, where the conversation never stops and women support each other on the road to success, one story at a time.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's like giving us a virtual high five.
And while you're at it, share the podcast with your fellow anti-gatekeepers.
Until next time, keep chasing your dreams and breaking those glass ceilings. After all, you are the master of your own success.
Thanks for being part of the Gateless journey. Catch you later.